Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if a computer can truly understand what your face is telling us in a conversation, or if it is just faking it? Well, that is exactly what a new study dove into. We all know that when we talk to each other, our faces do a lot more than just listen. They show emotions, emphasize points, and even signal when we're about to speak. Researchers want to study this, but manually watching hours and hours of video to mark every little facial movement is incredibly time-consuming. So they turn to technology. Specifically, a popular software called OpenFace to do the heavy lifting. But how good is this software at catching all those subtle communicative signals we use every day? That is the big question this paper tackles. Think about it. We express so much with our faces during a simple chat. This paper explores if a computer program, OpenFace, can automatically detect these facial signals in everyday conversations as well as a trained human observer can. While OpenFace is a popular tool, the researchers point out that many studies just use it without checking if it is actually working correctly. This can lead to a lot of errors sneaking into research. So they set out to compare OpenFace's results directly against what humans marked to see where it struggles and how we can use it better. In today's world, researchers are super interested in how we communicate naturally face to face. It is not just about the words we say, but also the whole package, our tone of voice, our body language, and especially our facial expressions. These visual cues, these facial signals, add a whole layer of meaning to what we're trying to say. But, as you can imagine, studying this messy, real. World communication is hard. The traditional way is for experts to painstakingly go through videos frame by frame, marking down every head tilt, every eyebrow raise, every smile. This is incredibly slow and expensive, especially if you want to study a lot of conversation. This is where tools like OpenFace come in. They promise to automate the process by recognizing facial movements, often based on something called action units or AOS. These action units are like the basic building blocks of facial expressions, developed by a system called FACS. It is a lot like how we break down words into letters and sounds. But just because it is automatic doesn't mean it is perfect. Imagine trying to track someone's face in a dimly lit room, or when they're halfway turned away, or when they scratch their nose. All these everyday things can mess with the computer's ability to see clearly. Plus, the software is trained on specific types of faces and expressions, and real conversations are full of unpredictable, spontaneous little movements that might not look exactly like the examples it learned from. Researchers are often interested in specific communicative signals, not just any twitch. For example, a smile that is part of a genuine greeting versus a nervous tick. Can OpenFace tell the difference? That is the tricky part. So what exactly does OpenFace do? It can detect around 18 different facial action units, or AUS. For each AU, it tells you if it thinks it is there or not, and how strong it is, on a scale from 0 to 5. It also tracks things like where your eyes are looking and the position of your head. It's a really complex piece of software with a lot of output. Now, many researchers are using OpenFace without making any changes, just using its default settings. They get all this data and plug it into their studies. And it makes sense, right? It saves so much time, but the authors of this paper are flagging a concern. Loads of studies using OpenFace don't seem to check how accurate it is. They just trust the output. And surprisingly few published research papers actually talk about validating these algorithms. This is where this research really shines. They're saying, hold on a second. We need to be cautious. There's evidence from other studies that OpenFace can struggle, especially with real-life conversations. For instance, some studies found that as soon as people turned their heads away from the camera a bit, the accuracy dropped significantly. And sometimes, the software might even mistake a head nod for an eyebrow movement because of how its algorithms work. This definitely raises a red flag about just plugging and playing with this technology. A big reason for this might be that the data OpenFace was trained on often consists of people performing carefully posed expressions like in acting or emotion studies. But real, spontaneous smiles or frowns in a natural chat are often different. They might be smaller, quicker, or have a different timing. So, a system trained on posed expressions might not be great at recognizing the subtle, natural flow of conversation. So to really test this, the researchers in this paper did something super thorough. They took a large collection of videos from actual Dutch conversations, people just chatting naturally for hours. This is called the coaxed corpus. These were not actors, these were friends talking. So the camera captured everything that real life throws at it. They recorded these conversations from the front, so they had clear views of everyone's faces. Then they fed all these videos into OpenFace. But instead of just using the default settings, they got creative. They explored what happened when they tweaked different settings, called thresholds. You can think of a threshold like a sensitivity dial. If it is set too low, OpenFace might detect every tiny flicker as a signal, leading to lots of false positives saying something happened when it didn't. If it is set too high, it might miss signals that are actually there, leading to false negatives. They tested various combinations of these settings, and 2 different ways OpenFace can detect signals. One looking only at whether a signal is present, and another looking at how intense it is. They even created a combined approach. And here's the crucial part. They had a team of human annotators, trained experts, watch the same videos and manually mark all the communicative facial signals they could identify. They were not just looking for any movement, but for movements that were part of the conversation's meaning, like a nod of agreement or a questioning eyebrow raise. They specifically excluded movements related to just speaking, like jaw movements or involuntary twitches. They carefully defined what counted as a signal, and they even coded blinks and gaze shifts because they can be really important in social interaction. To make sure their manual annotations were high quality, they even checked how often the human annotators agreed with each other. They used fancy statistical measures to ensure their human labels were as reliable as possible. This human annotated data became their gold standard, the benchmark against which they would compare OpenFace. Now, for the big reveal, they compared the thousands of facial signals OpenFace detected with the thousands of signals their human experts marked. They looked at how many signals both methods got right, how many OpenFace found that the humans missed, and how many signals the humans found that OpenFace missed. They also checked how accurate the timing was. And the results? Well, OpenFace, when used straight out of the box without any special tuning, really struggled. The paper states when comparing the out-of-the-box, i.e., using the default pre-trained models, OpenFace annotations to the manual annotations. It appears that OpenFace struggles with detecting facial signals when it is applied on a naturalistic conversation corpus. For example, when looking at eyebrow frowns, OpenFace often detected the movement a bit too early or a bit too late compared to what the human annotator saw. In some cases, it was picking up movement right at the start, or continuing to show movement after the person had already relaxed their face. It was like OpenFace was a bit out of sync. And sometimes it was just plain wrong about whether a frown was even happening. Even something as common as a blink, which OpenFace is supposed to be good at, showed problems. Sometimes OpenFace would mark a blink when the eyes were wide open, or it would miss blinks entirely. This is a pretty significant issue because blinks can convey a lot of information in conversations. Across the board, even with the best settings they could find, the overall agreement between OpenFace and the human annotations was quite low. The F1 scores, which is a way to measure overall accuracy, were generally below what we'd consider a good level of agreement, especially when compared to how well human annotators agree with each other. Some signals perform slightly better than others. But even then, the agreement was still weak. For instance, blinks were detected somewhat better than other signals, but still far from perfect. Signals like pressed lips or mouth corners going down were particularly poorly detected. The researchers make it clear using OpenFace without carefully checking its output is risky. They explain that the problem isn't just false negatives missing signals. It is also a very high number of false positives, where OpenFace claims a signal is there when it isn't. This adds noise to the data. And as they put it, in the case of noisy data, increasing the amount means that not only the signal of interest, but also the noise is amplified. So just collecting more data with OpenFace doesn't automatically mean you get better insights. It could just mean more noise. They strongly recommend that researchers always verify the output of these automatic tools. It is not enough to just let the software run. You need to actively check its work. So, what can we do? The paper offers some great recommendations. First, they suggest that if you are using OpenFace for action unit detection, you should always check the annotations in the video yourself. Even checking a random sample of your data can give you a good sense of whether the software is picking up what you expect. They even provide the manual their human annotators used. So you can see how a detailed manual annotation is done. If you are particularly interested in the timing of when these signals happen, meaning you want to know the exact moment a signal begins or ends, they say you should treat OpenFace's output as a starting point, and then manually adjust those start and end times. This is still way faster than annotating everything from scratch. They also highlight the importance of using and calibrating those sensitivity dials we talked about, the intensity thresholds. This means visually inspecting the signals OpenFace detects at at different threshold levels to find the setting that works best for the specific facial signal you're interested in. They even provide code to help you do this. For situations where you really need to rely on automated methods for large amounts of data, they suggest using a dual thresholding procedure. This means using a combination of settings that requires both the presence and intensity models in OpenFace to agree, and applying a specific threshold setting like 0.9, which showed the best results in their study for overall performance. But, and this is a big but, even after doing all this, they still highly recommend visually checking some of your data to catch any remaining noise. Ultimately, their core message is one of caution. The reliability scores they found for OpenFace on spontaneous conversation data are generally low. This suggests that relying solely on automated methods like OpenFace, at least in its current form, for detecting communicative facial signals in natural human interaction might not be the best approach without significant human oversight and validation. So, what is the big takeaway? While tools like OpenFace are incredibly useful for processing vast amounts of video data, we absolutely cannot just blindly trust their output for deep analysis, especially in the messy world of real conversations. The software can be a powerful assistant, but it is not yet a replacement for a trained human eye. The gap between what a computer sees and what a human observer identifies as a meaningful communicative signal is still quite significant. This research is a fantastic example of brilliant science. The researchers are not just pointing out a problem, they're actively providing solutions and tools to help other scientists use these technologies more responsibly. They're giving us a much clearer picture of OpenFace's strengths and weaknesses, and most importantly, providing concrete steps for how to improve its accuracy and reliability. It's a reminder that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it needs to be used skillfully and with an understanding of its limitations. If you are working with video data of people talking and you are interested in the nuances of their facial expressions, definitely check out this paper's recommendations. They've done the hard work to help you avoid some serious pitfalls. This study highlights the ongoing challenge of bridging the gap between automated analysis and the rich complexity of human communication. It makes me wonder what advancements we'll see in the future as these AI models get even more sophisticated. But for now, it's clear that human judgment remains a critical component in understanding the subtle dance of facial signals in conversation. What do you think about this? Have you ever used OpenFace or similar software in your work? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more cool science explained simply. Until next time, stay curious.